Hi everyone, and welcome to Discover Food Labs. Before we get started, I'd like for you to take just 10 seconds and have a quick think. In one word, what comes to mind when you hear the phrase picky eating? Some of the things that might have sprung to mind are perhaps words like beige, stress, restrictive. And those words really reflect how some of the families across Hampshire have described meal times to us. So they used words like stressful, frustrating, expensive, difficult, and exhausting. And Food Labs was developed directly in response to those experiences. So over the past year, I've been working alongside Hampshire County Council, as well as families from the local area and professionals such as yourselves, supporting the development of Food Labs. So what actually is Food Labs? Well, Food Labs is a free set of ready-to-use resources that professionals working to support families and children can use to facilitate playful lab experiment sessions that enable children and families to explore food together. The resources are designed for organisations that are already doing brilliant work with children and families. So, for example, you might be based in a school, you might be a HAF provider, in a family hub, a community group, alongside lots of other options. Really importantly, you don't need to be a food expert and you don't need to have run anything like this before. You can pick up the resources if you simply want some practical tools and activities to support conversations and exploration around food. We've targeted the resources specifically for children aged around 4 to 11 and their families, but you'll find that the activities can actually flex to work for children a bit younger or a bit older, depending on your setting. The Food Labs resources are designed to be flexible, and so you might choose to run the whole programme, or you might just pick out an individual lab and run that one session, or you might just take one activity and adapt that. It's up to you. So one of the big ideas behind Food Labs is that children become food scientists, and we'd really encourage you to lean into that. So when we've tried Food Labs, children absolutely loved things like wearing lab coats and little scientist goggles and having little scientist access passes. It helped the sessions feel exciting and it gave children permission to be curious. But there's also something actually important happening underneath that too. This scientist idea, it shifts the focus away from pressure around food and instead onto noticing and exploring. So instead of us asking, well, will they eat that? We're encouraging questions like, well, what do they notice? So children might compare colours, explore textures, or notice smells. Importantly, there are lots of different ways to take part, and that is really important, especially for children who might feel anxious around food, have sensory differences, or simply need a bit more time to feel confident. So in Food Lab, success might look like eating, but it could also just look like joining in, touching an unfamiliar food, or even just watching an adult explore. It's important to note at this point that Food Labs isn't designed as a specialist support for eating disorders or for complex feeding difficulties. It's a playful, low-pressure way to explore food. It's not a therapeutic intervention. So I just wanted to show you a few examples of what Food Labs can really look like. So this is Park Community School, and they helped us to trial and develop one of the Food Labs. So more than 50 children and family members took part, and what really stood out and what I hope comes across in just these few little pictures here is how engaged children were during the session. So families overwhelmingly told us that children felt more confident exploring food and were keen to come back for more sessions, which is always a good sign. And one really lovely bit of feedback actually we got was from the school chef. So this was run as part of activities over half term, HAF provision, and the school chef used the leftover vegetables from the session to create a salad that was served at lunch the next day. And they noticed that the children who'd taken part in the Food Lab, they actually chose to put more of the salad on their plate, and then they ate more of it as well. which is a really encouraging sign and supports the research that's out there that actually this low pressure exploration, it builds familiarity and confidence with food really successfully. Underpinning all of this is a really simple idea. So Food Labs is about helping children to build confidence and curiosity around food without pressure. And one of the ways that pressure can unintentionally show up is actually in the language that we use. So I wanted us to just try one really quick example together. So I want you to imagine that a child says to you, "I don't like that. I don't like that food." So which response feels most like Food Labs from what I've said so far? So you've got three options. A is, well, go on, just have a bite. B is, you don't have to taste it. What do you notice about that food? And C, that's healthy, so you should eat it. Hopefully B is the one that's standing out to you. Although it seems like a really small shift, it's actually a really important one. So if you take a step back, you can see that A and C are fundamentally focusing on, well, did the child eat it? Whereas B is instead focusing on, well, what did they notice? And that comes back to that point that I was making about how in Food Labs, success isn't only about tasting something new, it's about enabling that curiosity and exploration of food. So I thought it would be helpful to show you what a food lab actually looks like in practice. So there are currently 8 food labs in total, and I'm going to talk you through the colour lab as an example. Each lab is designed to be about 60 to 90 minutes in total, but you'll find that this is flexible. So actually, for example, Park Community School trialled the colour lab, and they actually ran it as a 45-minute session, just because that's what the length that their sessions usually are. So every food lab explores a different food group, and it's framed as an experiment. So to spark curiosity, they all start with a research question. The colour lab, we're exploring vegetables through the question, can we eat a rainbow? Each lab then follows the same broad structure. So firstly, we have predict and prepare. So children make guesses or share ideas before food is even explored. Next, we test and tinker, and this is my favourite bit. So this is all about sensory exploration. So children get hands-on, but importantly, it's not about tasting. It's about exploring food through things like colour and texture and smell. And this is a really important step in building food confidence, because before children can feel comfortable tasting something unfamiliar, they do often need opportunities to simply notice or to touch or to smell or to playfully explore it first. But this is the bit that often gets overlooked. We're all probably guilty of it, myself definitely included. It's really common, isn't it, to introduce new foods to children at meal times. But at that point, there's already pressure to eat. So this test and tinker is a really important step before we then build towards a shared big experiment. The big experiment is often creating a snack or a meal together with an opportunity to sit down and to then explore it as a group. In the colour lab, for example, families work together to build a shared rainbow picnic. So there's then a chance to reflect. And at this point, as facilitators, rather than asking questions like, well, did you like it? Actually, at this point, we're encouraging families and children to talk about things like, well, what did you notice? What surprised you? And finally, there's a simple home experiment. So this is a task that families can take away to continue exploring if they'd like to. We've deliberately made these feel affordable and achievable. So it might be something as simple as spotting foods at home, or it might be taking a leftover ingredient home from the session and planning how they'll use that together. So hopefully you can see that there's a clear structure there to help guide food labs, but it's really important for me to stress that it's not a rigid one. So you know the children and the families that you're working with, and the resources are there to enable you to support them. They're not there to box you in. So at this point, you might be thinking, okay, well, this sounds great, but actually how much time and effort is this going to take me to run a food lab session? So I thought it would be helpful to quickly show you what the Food Labs resources actually look like, because they're designed to make delivery feel manageable for you. So there are 3 key ways that you're supported. There's a step-by-step guide, there's a slide deck, and there's also a collection of optional resources that you can dip into. So we're going to take a look at each of these now so that you know what to expect. So at the centre of Food Labs is the how-to guide. And the aim here was really simple. We wanted to create something that feels genuinely easy to pick up and to use by busy professionals such as yourselves. So the guide is designed to help you quickly get to grips with things like, well, what's the aim of this food lab? What do I need to run the session? What will we actually be doing during the session? So each lab has a session snapshot page, like you can see on the far right of the screen here. And this is probably the quickest way to get a feel for a session, because at a glance you can see the flow of the lab, what children will be doing, suggested timings, and key things to think about as you're facilitating. So that before you even begin, you can quickly picture what running that session might actually look like in practice. The guide also has plenty of support to help you feel confident facilitating food labs. So for example, you'll find that there's a section on understanding and supporting picky eating to help you understand why children might respond differently to food in different ways. There's also a section that's on facilitation skills, and that has lots of practical guidance on how you can encourage this curiosity and also how you can respond in the moment to children in ways that keep the focus on that exploration rather than adding pressure. And woven throughout the pages describing each of the 8 food labs are lots of practical hints and tips to help you adapt for different ages, different confidence levels, different settings, so that you can confidently make food labs work for your own setting and the children in front of you. So alongside the guide, each food lab also comes with ready-to-use session slides. So these really are there to support delivery in the moment. They help create a bit of rhythm to the session, and they give some children something visual to follow, which can be particularly helpful for children who benefit from predictability or some visual support. What I will say is that the slides and the guide are designed to work together. So before you run a lab, I'd really encourage you to have a quick look through both of them together so that you can see how they support one another. But it's really important to remember that they're there to support your facilitation, not to script it. So for example, use as much or as little as these slides as works for you. There's also a big appendix to the Food Labs guide with lots of optional supporting tools. So there are some things that you might want to print out and use during sessions. So for example, we've given you little scientist access passes, experiment logs for children to record discoveries throughout the session, and certificates as well to celebrate curiosity and participation along the way. And just as children are encouraged to experiment and learn throughout food labs, we've also included a reflection framework for facilitators too. So if you use any of these food labs activities, you have a simple way to reflect on the session and your own facilitation. Think about what worked well and consider any small changes that you might want to make if you decide to run a food lab session again. Really important to stress though, you absolutely don't need to use everything. So think of these resources that I've just talked you through, given you a whistle-stop tour of, as a flexible toolkit, and you can pick up, adapt and use it in whatever way works best for you and your setting. So by now you might be thinking, well, okay, this sounds actually good, but how would this actually work in my setting? What about X or Y? And you can see lots of kind of questions and comments on the screen here. These are exactly the types of things that people raised as we developed food labs. So we've deliberately spent a lot of time speaking to organisations that might want to use food labs, asking professionals like yourselves what feels practical, and also trialling the resources with families and speaking to families to understand what actually works in real life for them. So the main thing I'd love you to take away from this is that Food Labs is designed to be flexible. There isn't one right way to run a food lab. So you might be based in a school, in a library, in a family hub, or delivering a HAF programme. They're all very different. The children will be different, the families will be different, the time and the resources available will be different. So instead of creating something really rigid, we've deliberately created Food Labs as something that feels flexible. So you might run a whole food lab exactly as it's written, but you might just pick up one activity and include that in something that you already do. You might have a large group, a small group, parents and children together, or children on their own. All of these approaches are absolutely okay. The aim isn't to deliver Food Labs perfectly. The aim is to use the ideas in ways that help children become more curious and more confident and more willing to explore food in your own setting. So, what next? Well, hopefully at this point you're wondering how to get your hands on all of the lovely resources that I've been talking about. So 3 things to take away from today. Firstly, everything that I've talked you through is freely available. So it's on my website. So there you'll be able to explore all of the resources, download them, have a proper browse through in your own time. Secondly, I'd really value your feedback on this video and this little introduction to Food Labs. So you can find a quick feedback form. It's only 3 questions. It takes genuinely less than 2 minutes on the screen there. It'd be brilliant if you could fill it out for me. We'll send round a little FAQ document of questions that commonly came up at sessions of these Discover Food Labs that we ran in person. But if you've got any particular questions that aren't covered in that, or something springs to mind and you just want to talk it through, please do get in touch. You're very welcome. So drop me an email. Hello. Thank you so much for watching this and for making it to the end. I hope that you enjoy exploring Food Labs, have fun, and experiment away.